Hello everyone, this is your second place gamer here, more like a dedicated forum dweller. First of all, thank you guys, thank you all for the supposedly positive feedback, and the negative ones if they were there. I think I might continue posting some of those what do I think about type videos, at least for a while, and hope you like them. That being said, yesterday was a big day for Diablo 4, or at least its resurrection it seems. Maybe. Kinda prepare the tier list for what I think was probably all of the changes they announced at the CampfireChat yesterday, Part 1 of Season 2 announcements. So, let's take a look at all of them and see what and how I think they'll impact the gaming experience of Diablo 4 and overall the game. So, the first item in the list is coveted items can now be marked as favorite and cannot be sold or salvaged. I think this is absolutely a great change. Tier S. Maybe one improvement to go all the way is to simply mark the decision itself. For sale, for salvage, for trade, or keep in stash. The next one is Nightmare Sigils now teleport you directly into the Nightmare Dungeon. This is absolutely another winner. There was no reason to have two loading screens one after another. Next, Nightmare Sigils rewarded from Whisper Caches will now always be within 5 levels of the highest level Nightmare Dungeons the player has completed. I like this change. I think it may be one of those improvements that may go a bit under the radar, but would really improve the overall experience, the smoothness of player progression, quote unquote. Caches often dropped really low sigils that we either salvaged or just not carry at all. Next we have Nightmare Sigils are now rewarded upon completion of a Nightmare Dungeon instead of final boss defeat, because some dungeons don't have a final boss. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was a bug or inconsistency, but sometimes a player completes the Nightmare Dungeon and then waits for the bubble to pop up, but doesn't. I mean, if you were to rate it, it is a consistency improvement, but feels like a baseline mandatory thing to have had in the first place, to be honest. Whisper Caches adhere to the item slot of the cache. I believe this is a consistency improvement. However, I do not think it should be strict and limited to the way that they announce it to be. We'll see how it goes. Health-type chests have now specific icons on the map to indicate their type. Another consistency improvement, but really, to be honest, not as much of a fan. I like the potential surprise of going to the chest and seeing exactly what I want, or being like, that's not quite what I wanted, but I guess I'll go to the next one. Many dungeon layouts have been redesigned. I guess depends on implementation, right? Thing is, don't think that dungeons should feel perfect in terms of never directing the player in a wrong direction. There should be mistakes. It's just that overcoming one should feel like a different kind of experience rather than waste of time. Perhaps were events designed for that purpose, but for whatever the reason, they failed to do so. Dungeon events have increased their monster density. Absolutely loathe this change. I don't like it at all. It's absolutely the worst possible decision. Please do not turn Diablo 4 into Diablo 3. That notion for faster leveling, getting monstrous experiences at points, please, no. We need a meaningful leveling experience, leveling up our characters, not something that gets done faster. Next up we got NPCs should no longer be killed with one hit in world tiers 3 and 4. I mean, you're not kidding, right? That should have been treated as a bug as far as I'm concerned. Gems drop as crafting material. Gem materials can now be salvaged and taken to the jeweler for crafting. I'm not really a fan of this. I think it's an overkill and a sledgehammer. I think the problem with gems is that they had really low cost for sale. They should have just increased the sale cost for gems and I think it would have been fine. Scrolls of escape are now consumed if hardcore player disconnects while in combat. I mean, this was absolute must to begin with, and I think that we should be all worried if this hasn't happened by now. Reduce the chance of being locked into a certain stats of a legendary item by reducing their overall enchanting costs. I don't think the problem of legendary items is being locked onto a certain stats. I think the problem was with the enchanting system feeling like giving little upgrades all the time. I think that giving 3 choices instead of 2 should have been a good start. In World Tier 3 and 4, normal magic and non-sacred / non-ancestral rare items will drop as crafting resources. Personally not a fan. I get the viewpoint where this decision is made from, but I think the right decision should have been to make all the other types of items sometimes usable. Speaking of which, I think that there might be one small session about itemization again at the end. Higher level monsters in World Tiers 3 and 4 drop sacred and ancestral items of greater power potential. I guess depends on the word potential here. Sure, we need to have some semblance of getting higher and more powerful items, but I don't like it if it's like guaranteed chance. The point of itemization is to make the player feel like not being deceived or trolled, not just being fed power all the time. Although you cannot notice it right now, there is difference between those two. Normal Whisper cache rewards now provide plus 10 item power. Upgraded caches now provide plus 20 rewards. I guess I'll have to define this more precisely. What does it mean plus 10 or plus 20? More than they used to drop or more than you have equipped on your character? Again, the goal here is to provide another mean to the player for potentially different rewarding experience, not a guaranteed power drop. Perhaps consider dropping items with less frequent rolls instead of necessarily just providing higher IP drops. Next up, decrease the time spent to reach level 100, making it 40% faster. Experience gained from killing masters at level 50 and above have been significantly increased. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't like the mindset here. Yes, the leveling up to 100 perhaps should have been increased, but I don't like the way that they are doing this. The game should provide meaningful journey to level 100, not a fast forward. I don't like this game to become another Diablo 3 copy. And even more, I want Diablo 4 to remain an engaging game rather than a farming or mow down simulator. Monster level in World Tier 3 and 4 match the current player level at a minimum after level 55 and 75 respectively. Yes, this is a step in the right direction. However, as mentioned before, the monster scaling and levels should grow in layers so that the game provides a layered, multi-layered system of difficulty progression to the player. Not all monsters have to feel like being overgrown, and not all monsters have to feel like growing or keeping up ahead from the player. Perhaps there is a bit more intricacy here in terms of implementation details, but it is a necessary step that should be taken on the long run IMO. Incenses now grant a bonus experience and persist after death. I guess from a standpoint of persistency, the experience part is fine. However, I don't quite like the no punishment on death part. I think bonuses like elixirs and incenses should actually expire on death, and it gives the player the incentive to look after and not die at all. Increase the potency of experience bonuses, elixirs, and seasonal blessings by increasing them based on world tier bonus. I guess this is a marginal step in the right direction. I like that there are higher bonuses at higher tiers. However, again, I think that should be a punishment for this reward. I think it's a good idea to reward the player for keeping themselves alive longer. Massively reduced backtracking by placing all dungeon objectives on the critical path of a dungeon. I guess this is an improvement. However, I don't like the mindset behind these decisions. The game should provide player excitement and dynamic experiences along paths of all kinds, even those that don't necessarily lead to completing the objectives as soon as possible. I.e., the game should not solely reward the player for their impatience, the rush for a faster completion and faster retrieval of the quote-unquote guaranteed reward. Improve the overall readability of traps by enhancing their overall visual effects. This may look marginal to some, but to me feels like a ground for potential concern. Let me put this straight. I don't want Diablo 4 to become a game of layered dodges, the type of the floor is lava for a few seconds. I want the monster with bigger attacks to feel more directed to the player and more natural. I guess they can reduce the damage taken from those big AoE attacks when affected on the perimeter, perhaps reaching a bit here. However, I think it is important to keep the game feel more like a punch-for-punch combat, rather than dodge the lava and back to fight type experience overall. Reducing the trap and monster crowd control. Perhaps, but I think that there should be still some incentive for the player to invest in their defensive affixes, in their defensive profile. I think that CC reduction should have been increased on items, and instead the impairments should be reduced and the impaired duration should have been removed. End caps have been added to ensure dungeon layouts don't feel too linear. I guess this is feeling right, feel good move, but I really don't have an opinion. In fact, I even don't know what an end cap is, to be honest. Paragon glyph experience has been increased. I'm not really a fan of this move. I'm really not a fan of the idea of getting power quicker. I guess the good point is to reduce the number of times to get the nightmare dungeons, but then people ask for even more levels on glyphs. I'm really against that. I really don't like Paragon levels to feel like both quick and really strong power. There should be some reasonable limit, and then should be some secondary source to sort of capitalize on it better, but it should not grow more and more. Objectives have been removed from some dungeons. Only defeating the boss is needed to defeat the nightmare dungeon. I don't quite like this idea. I guess there are two approaches. One, reduce the dungeons to like this sort of labyrinth where you can skip everything and just kill the boss. Or two, make the dungeons feel like more layered with more content inside. I think I would have liked the second approach more. Sort of Diablo Immortal dungeons. They should have increased more attempt into creating dungeons feeling like a more unique experience rather than making them a labyrinth with a boss. And no, I don't think that we should take into consideration time as an equation here. It is more important to provide the right experience rather than focusing on the duration. Now, there are like 3 to 4 maybe points regarding renown in general. I think that I'll give just my overall thought instead. I don't think that renown should be a rewarding experience. I think it should be introductory experience and perhaps maybe have the opportunity to get a special item. I don't think that renown should give Paragon boards. In addition, if they keep the renown as is, I think it would be better idea to keep it like a world tier 3/4 and therefore not quote-unquote pollute newly created characters.